The universe expands, yet the truth remains, still within.
Are we ready for what comes next? We have spent decades looking outward, asking the same question over and over again, as if repeating it might somehow bring us closer to the answer. Are we alone? We build machines capable of seeing beyond our solar system. We listen to the silence between stars. We analyze signals, patterns, and distant worlds, all driven by a deep and almost instinctive need to know if something else is out there. And beneath all of this effort, there is a quiet expectation that one day we will find something. That one day the silence will break, because the idea of not being alone is powerful. It suggests that life is not an accident limited to this planet, but something that emerges wherever conditions allow it. It gives meaning to the vastness of the universe, turning empty space into possibility. And more than anything, it makes us feel less isolated, less singular, less alone in existence. But in our desire to find something, we rarely stop to consider what that discovery would actually mean. Because finding life would not be the end of the question. It would be the beginning of something far more complex. The moment we confirm that we are not alone, everything changes. Not just scientifically, but psychologically, philosophically, and even existentially. Our understanding of our place in the universe would shift instantly. We would no longer be the only known observers of reality, the only consciousness capable of reflecting on existence. There would be something else, somewhere else, looking back at the same universe from a completely different perspective. And that is where things become uncertain, because we tend to imagine this moment through a human lens. We imagine communication, shared understanding, perhaps even cooperation. But that assumption is based on something very limited, our own way of thinking. And there is no reason to believe that something entirely different would think like us, feel like us, or even want the same things that we want. What if they are more advanced than us, not just in technology, but in understanding? What if their perception of reality is so different that we cannot even fully comprehend it? Not because we are incapable of learning, but because the gap is too large, too fundamental, too distant from the way our minds process the world. In that case, contact would not be a simple exchange of information. It would be an encounter with something that challenges the limits of our understanding. And beyond understanding, there is something else. Control. Because we like to believe that we are in control of our discoveries, that we can decide when and how to engage, that we can manage the consequences of what we find. But the moment contact becomes real, that control disappears. We cannot predict their intentions. We cannot assume their behavior. We cannot guarantee that we are prepared for what comes next. And that uncertainty introduces something we rarely associate with discovery: risk. Not necessarily in a physical sense, but in a deeper, more subtle way. The risk of realizing that we are not as advanced as we believe. The risk of confronting something that reshapes our understanding of reality. The risk of losing the comfort of thinking we are at the center of our own story. Because once we know, we cannot return to not knowing. And maybe that is the most important part. Because we are not just searching for life, we are searching for answers. But what if the answers are not what we expect? What if they do not bring clarity, but more questions? What if instead of simplifying our understanding of the universe, they make it more complex, more uncertain, more difficult to define? because every answer has the potential to open new questions. And some of those questions may not have comfortable explanations. We also have to look at ourselves, at how we deal with difference, with the unknown, with things that challenge our beliefs. Even among ourselves, we struggle to understand one another. We divide, we conflict, we interpret reality in different ways, often unable to agree on what is true or what matters. And if we cannot fully understand each other, what happens when the other is something entirely beyond human experience? Because contact is not just discovery, it is confrontation. A confrontation with something that does not belong to our world, our culture, or our way of thinking. Something that exists outside our expectations, outside our assumptions, outside the limits we are used to operating within. And in that confrontation, we are forced to face something deeper than the question of life itself. We are forced to face our own limitations. So maybe the question we have been asking is incomplete. Maybe, are we alone? Is only the beginning. Because the real question, the one we avoid, the one that lingers beneath everything else, is not about what we might find. It is about what happens after we find it. Because discovery is not the end. It is the moment everything changes. And when that moment comes, when the silence finally breaks, when we realize that we are not the only ones here, we will be faced with something we cannot undo, something we cannot ignore, something that will redefine everything we thought we knew about existence. So maybe, before we keep searching, before we continue asking, before we push further into the unknown, there is one question we should be asking ourselves. Are we truly ready for what comes next? If this made you think, take a moment to like the video and tell me in the comments. Do you think humanity is ready for contact?